Hi, guys. Welcome to our next episode of the Time Maker podcast with Mike Roblick and myself, Alex. Today, we have a very special guest who actually succeeded to make two successful Kickstarter campaigns. So, Mike, if you want to introduce our special guest today, if you would kindly introduce our guest today, would be great.
Yeah, so Mike here again. Really excited today to bring Peter Sargison from Second Hour Watches on. As a active enthusiast in the micro brand community and everything, myself also, Peter's projects, starting with the Gin Clear Diver, definitely caught my attention, and I've been lucky enough to have some great conversations with Peter in the past, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that with everybody who tunes in. So, without further ado, Peter, thanks for coming on, and why don't you tell us where that beautiful sunny location is right now, and give us a short kind of synopsis on how you got started with Second Hour, and what brought you into the world of horology and microbrands.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Alex. Thanks for welcoming me to your. It's not a podcast, is it? What are we calling it? Video podcast as well, is it? Yes, I am in sunny, exotic Romana, which is, well, not really exotic. That was a joke, but it's about an hour and a half south of Melbourne, down to the southeast of Melbourne in Australia, and it's on the Port Phillip Bay, where there's a large amount of coastal communities that wrap around the bay, and year round about this time of year, whether it's Easter or some other holiday period, it tends to be inundated with tens of thousands of people escaping Melbourne, and this year is no exception. And I think perhaps with all the pent-up travel that because Melbourne spent most of last year really in rolling lockdowns and on and off, we've had it harder than many, although things are pretty good now. So I think all that pent-up travel, that desire to travel has come out, and people have just poured down here. This is the most insane time. Anyway, we've got a holiday house down here that we don't own. We just rented it, but it's a nice little spot, and we've got a little view out of one window of the ocean, and we're about a sort of a 5-10 minute walk from the sea. So I got into watches, since I was a kid, owning little Casio and Timex digital watches, and then later on became a fan of horology more broadly, and particularly got interested in micro brands, a number of years ago, and a lot of that was exposure to various YouTube channels, and there's been an absolute explosion of those, particularly over the last couple of years. But we've got some leaders now who were just getting started a number of years ago when I started to get attracted to micro brands. And I think what drew me to the microbrand space was the individuality and the individual expression, the fact that they weren't produced in tens of thousands, and that when you're owning a microbrand watch, you're really getting something that was in some ways quite exclusive, although that's not necessarily something that I'm super attracted to. But the fact that it's an original design, I mean, if you're looking at a Hamilton khaki field, you're seeing that design hasn't changed much for decades, and they've produced I don't know how many tens of thousands of those that they produced, and yet they're still one of the most popular, certainly the most popular field watch, and they are the go-to field watch. But the thing about micro brands is that you get all these fantastic different designs, some of them pretty challenging to the eyes. But when people get it right, it's just a pleasure to wear it on your wrist. And I can remember my first real micro brand was a Borealis. I think it was their Portus Calais, which I really enjoyed. But I had other watches before then, over the last sort of decade or so, but it was that was my first real kind of micro brand foray, and understanding like the level of quality that came with that, and really priced so competitively. So I began to I would have watches in my collection that I would upgrade essentially, and I bought some bits and pieces to allow me to pull watches apart and put them back together with new parts, either upgrading the hands for better lume or putting in sapphire crystal, just small detail. And then I started to look at the individual components and build up an entire watch from scratch. It's just a plane going over the head over here.
No worries.
I don't know how loud that is. A lot of joy flights happening down here on the peninsula. So, yes.
So you started to
it's a helicopter.
Rebuild watch from scratch, right?
It's a whirlybird.
So yeah, I started actually building entire watches from scratch. So I found a supplier of Miyota 8 series movements, and then another set of guys who had the Seagull ST2130, which is the
clone of the ETA.
Clone. Fantastic movement, and I bought a whole bunch of those, and I started getting different dials and cases and matching it all up and building little projects at home. And then I thought, what if I was to design a watch? So this is it's about 2 years ago, in fact, so it's still quite recently. So I started designing a watch about 2 years ago, and I wondered how I would actually get it manufactured. And so I started just hitting the internet and looking for manufacturers. That first foray into finding someone to actually make my prototypes for me, that was such an eye-opening experience. And anyone who started up their own micro brand and hasn't spent time living abroad in either China or Hong Kong will understand the pain and frustration and lost money that comes with trying to find someone to help you realize your dream. And so many letdowns, and most of the letdowns were, well, I think, out of the 20 or so manufacturers that I approached, or more actually, probably a lot more, I think it's the communication that's the issue.
It's a misunderstanding and the communication, definitely. Yeah. And even if both of you speak English, there is the cultural difference.
Yeah.
Asian people, Chinese people especially, have their own way of doing business.
Very much so. I think there's more in common. And I was saying this to Josh from the Swiss Watch Company when we did his video chat about a month ago or 3 weeks ago, was that there's even a significant difference where your particular supplier head office is in Hong Kong versus the mainland China. I found that most of those Hong Kong teams, they tend to value similar principles to what I would experience in a Western corporate culture, and their communication style and they tend to. Whereas on mainland China, you get a lot of over-promising, under-delivering. In Hong Kong, you get a much more realistic picture of how things stand, and then your expectations are shaped in a more realistic way.
Indeed.
So that was a real eye-opener. Not to say that I don't have some manufacturing partners on the Chinese mainland. I know that I work with some hand manufacturers, obviously, and some case. Obviously, the hardcore manufacturing anyway is done on the mainland.
Whatever happens, all components are made in mainland.
So that there was a lot of heartache involved, and eventually found a team who made the Gin Clear Diver prototypes, and they did sufficiently well that I was actually able to put those out for review and start getting those reviewed. I just took I'd been studying. I knew that the only way to get these funded was not from my own back pocket, because, I'm not a millionaire by any means, and having that kind of money at my disposal to sort of get the production done up front was going to be a near on impossibility. So I knew it had to be crowdfunded, and Kickstarter being the most common platform for that. I knew that my job was essentially just studying other Kickstarters and seeing how they did it and what they did well and what they didn't do well. And there was a common theme there, and that common theme tended to revolve around lots and lots of reviews. So I knew that I had to get the watches reviewed. Sorry, we've just got a lot of flies here now that it's starting to get a bit warm. I knew that getting the Gin Clear Diver reviewed was going to be the cornerstone of it.
With your background in data analysis, you start analyzing different Kickstarter campaign, and you get that the corner key is like, the key of this is like having the product review will help me gather backers. Am I right? That's the process, more or less.
Yes, having a strong subscriber mailing list. Yeah, so it's one thing to have. Everyone wants everyone wants Instagram followers. Everyone wants Facebook followers and all that sort of stuff. But in the end, that doesn't. I don't think that
the key
accounts
is the
for as
mailing
much
list.
as actually having the mailing list. People who have taken that extra step, it's easy just to press follow on Instagram, but it's one thing to go, right, I'm going to visit that person's or that company's website, read what's going on, put them through my own sort of personal vetting process to make sure that they sort of stand up to scrutiny.
So you get watch reviews, and then you put together a subscribing list, and then you start to get subscribers.
That's right, yeah. And I think the bigger that list is, if anyone's thinking about starting up one themselves, the bigger that list is, I think the better it's going to be ultimately for your launch. It's a good indicator in the end.
How many people? What do you consider the bigger? I would say 10,000, 15,000, 5,000. What is the number?
Well, that would be very nice, Alex. But I'm pretty sure my Gin Clear.
I don't know. I'm just asking, man. I just want to hear from you.
Honestly, I think when I launched the Gin Clear Diver, we had about 1,300. So only
nice.
Yeah. So it's not a lot, but I think that.
But it converted,
it was really down
to fund the campaign. That's the most important, man. That's
and
far enough.
Kickstarter are very fond of Kickstarter are very fond of letting you know that most of your pledges are coming from people who've found you via searching from their website. So that's. They'll tell you that, and they'll even show you the stats. These people actually found you by searching on your on our website, right, on the Kickstarter website, to search in watches or something, or dive watch or something like that. The reality is most of those people have probably already heard of you in some way via a review, or they've found your website. Maybe they just didn't subscribe. So they really they have some prior knowledge of you. But how many reviews we had done? I think. Prior to launch, we might have had about 13. I'm just doing this all from memory, of course, but I think prior to launch, and then a couple during the campaign, and then following the campaign, probably another 10 to 15 just happening, during our pre-order period, and then another few that during our second production run, because we had sufficiently high demand that we'd sold out the first production run. Honestly, I would have made.
Sorry, Peter.
Yep.
So on the first pre-order, on this 1,300 subscribers, how many backers did it convert? What was the ratio?
I think we had. I don't know off the top of my head, because I haven't looked at the numbers from that campaign for about a year, but we had about. On the Kickstarter, there was about 245, and then probably another 30 over on Indiegogo.
That's good.
I'll never. That was basically a pre-order run through Indiegogo, but I can tell you I'll never do Indiegogo again
Why?
Because their fees are absolutely ridiculous. They do almost nothing, but they've got higher fees than Kickstarter for their in-demand. Thank God that I had my own website set up with its own payment portal now, that I never have to go back to someone like Indiegogo for pre-order, because they just charge excessive amounts. Their only advantages are, I suppose, that the data that comes out is a bit more oriented towards operating a business. So they have the concept of SKUs actually tied into the data. So every pledge you can see actually is assigned to a specific SKU, and they do help you set up some of that in the background. But ultimately, it's not great value for money. I don't think the return on investment is great. So anyway, so that one sold through, and then I did a second production run. But if I was to have done it all again, I would have made more Gin Clear divers in the first production run and continued to sell those through, because the day after the campaign launch, so we launched on the 31st of March last year, and then the day after they terminated my contract on my day job. So I was still working a day job then. So we had to survive most of last year when the economy here in Melbourne just went down the tubes thanks to the virus, and particularly the very volatile project work that I'm in. Was, the very strong reaction to the downturn, that projects were getting closed down all over the place, particularly in IT and things like that.
Everybody got impacted,
Yeah, everybody got it. Nobody can hold claim to having the only sob story in this crazy world we're living in at the moment. But it meant that I was operating the business essentially as a full-time concern, but also having to draw our income for myself and my family from that money as well. So we would have made more watches, but I just couldn't.
Of course.
And so I ended up running another production run and doing it as a pre-order, and that did well enough to actually pay for the entire production run, the second production run, which was smaller. But
so the pre-order, you did it directly on your website this time.
That's right, yeah, and that was a lot better. And the production run was small. Heaps better. I mean, it just means that you get to keep more of that money in your business where it belongs, rather than paying it out to a Kickstarter.
Of course,
really,
And you use the same mailing list for the second pre-order, or you did you created another mailing list, or that was the same?
Because it's only me essentially running the company, having the complexities, having more of a nuanced marketing approach isn't really available to me, because especially now where I'm actually I'm back working a day job, plus servicing my 400 customers from Gin Clear, 400 Gin Clear diver customers, plus so doing the campaign, and putting out fires. There have been fires during this campaign period, and so it's fair to say I've sort of pushed myself a little bit too far and too hard. But fortunately, my fiance, she's coming on board the company. So
nice.
She's going to be joining us. Yeah, it's going to be great. So it means that I can continue to work my day job, plus working in the off time, working on Second Hour and my other brand, First Stage. And then, having some of the day-to-day stuff for the watch companies taken care of by someone I just trust completely. I mean, my partner Akira, she's just incredibly efficient, incredible attention to detail. Right in the vein of myself. It's like an extension of me, and we just work incredibly well together. It's just, I'm extremely grateful to have found a life partner who I can share more than
embrace
just
your project.
Yeah, so I'll go right now, ask the question. I'm gonna start with, what was the inspiration behind the design? Like, the designs of the Gin Clear, design of the Mandela, and the upcoming design of the Giant Stride have been very well received. And where do you find your design inspiration? And then from there, we'll go to what's the one thing that you wish you would have known when you did start the business. And it's probably going to circle back around to that manufacturing stuff, would be my guess, right? But
yeah.
So yeah, let's shoot with that. I'll ask that
And
question.
I want to discuss movement later on. Huh? I'm interested to have Peter's point of view on different movements and things.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go with that. Let's go.
Yeah.
So Peter,
all right.
Great to hear the story behind how you got things up and running with those first two campaigns. And just curious, like myself as an enthusiast, I love the design of the Gin Clear, love the design of the Mandela. I can't wait to see what's coming up with the Giant Stride. So, where do you find your design inspiration, and how did you manage to put the pieces together, I guess, in the way that you did with that design language that you developed for Second Hour so far?
Yeah, well, I'm a big fan of geometry and complex and interwoven geometric shapes, particularly the way they've been used over centuries. And they keep reoccurring through designs right from the beginning. And the triangle obviously being a critical one for us. Reflected in the way we're doing our dial layouts. Of course, that'll change over time. We're not just going to continue to just do the same thing over and over again. In fact, a lot of the designs I've got in the background working along now have sort of morphed into something a little bit different, but still, you can still see those hints of that initial design. And the Gin Clear diver for me was really about, and this is another thing that I studied, was that looking at something that is different, but not so different as to alienate the audience. So I know that a lot of weird and wonderful designs come out, and Kickstarter's full of them, and I think a lot of them they're beautiful to look at, but they alienate too many people. With that, if you're falling too hard into the extreme bucket where your designs are too challenging, or your designs are too strongly reminiscent of something from Rolex or Omega or a Tag or something like that, then you're also going to get into trouble, especially in the watch community, that micro brand watch community, who can be quite merciless with designs that are too obviously homaged. So for me, it was about skirting a fine line. I'll leave it up to people who might be watching about whether they think the Gin Clear was just too much homage and not enough original. But I personally wanted it to be something that was familiar but not too familiar. But that's where I left it behind. I think I wanted to then push out and forge a bit of a new way forward, which is one of the reasons we redesigned the Giant Stride a couple of times during the course of the last couple of years. And what we've settled on now is pretty close to where it needs to be. And it's also why the Mandala is also quite distinct. We're still using that 12, 4, and 8 o'clock major indices design. Yeah. In fact, and with these cantilevered indices on the second layer above that sit up and sort of extrude out over the top of the underlying indices around the layer underneath, but also some attraction in the form of the textures and patterns expanding out from that center point. Designing for me is just one of those things that I would honestly spend my entire life doing if I could, and have someone else run the business side of things. Although I do like the manufacturing side and dealing with the manufacturers, and believe it or not, that can actually be quite enjoyable once you've found the right manufacturing partners. You can actually have
of course
some enjoyment in that back and forwards. They come along the ride with you, you know, and they actually get really heavily invested. And when they see your project, they don't just see dollar signs. When they see your project, the good ones, when they see your project has success, they actually get very excited because even though it's your design, they have helped realize some of those nuances in your design that have come through those endless hours of discussing, like, oh, if we put this here, then it's going to impact on this, you know, and the tolerances on this are really small. You might need to rethink that, you know, because they've got that engineering perspective. And I don't have a grounding in engineering. So it's that meeting of minds that can be quite exciting. So I guess from here on in, in terms of what I've got in development, we've got the Giant Stride coming up. That should be revealed in the next few weeks. I've also got a very exciting design that is featuring we're going back to a Swiss automatic for that, where I've got a field watch, a hand-wound field watch with a small sub-seconds dial. We're just beginning prototyping on that. And I've got probably another ridiculous amounts. I've got ridiculous amounts of things in prototyping phase, because I once we've built up enough of an audience, I can start to chain together these releases and start to sort of really get these watches out of here and out, you know, in a kind of constant flow, which is it just allows me to sort of exercise the demons inside of, like, you know, I've got to create, and I've got to, you know, in order to create, I can't just do the designs. I've also got to make them and see them in physical form and then release them.
For sure.
So yeah.
That's cool. And I mean, it's a really good point that you made there also, like, you know, finding that fine line between what you want to design and build and what you need to design and build, because you might want to release a product that's a passion project that you love, but it still does have to be commercially viable, right? And we know that a lot of what is commercially viable is the stuff that would be, you know, as much as I love it, I love the microbrand community and I love engaging with people in the community, and you know, to no fault to them, they're merciless. If something is on the wrong side of that line and it's too much of a homage, watch out. Right? Because that's gonna
it depends because you can see some project, like there were some Chronocrats projects, or you see even the Dan Henry projects. Man, the things are a one-to-one rip-off of the Patek or whatever, and it's sold like crazy. So it really depends. You know, it's like, it's really funny. You cannot, it's hard to understand where the line is. Sometimes people will scream, it's another Submariner homage, but then on the other hand, they buy a chronograph that is actually a rip-off of the Blancpain chronograph, and everybody jumping on the wagon and say how amazing it is. So it's really, to me, it's really something difficult to understand.
It is. It's like it's a special sauce, and I think that you know, some people find the mixture for that sauce easier than other people do, for sure. I guess so. Kind of something, you know, given that, like, you're relatively new to this, but you know, you've just successfully funded the Mandela in 7 minutes. So the sauce is obviously about the right flavor for the microbrand community right now. But what's one thing that you wish you would have known before you started down the path with second hour watches?
I guess two things is hold out for the right manufacturer and keep, because ultimately the Gin Clear Diver manufacturer was not, they're not a good team. They left us with a lot of issues that we had to sort out ourselves. We've since parted ways with them. But you know, there's no easy way. I think that's part of the testing ground, and I've spoken on this before, is part of the testing ground of proving whether you've got the cojones to stay in the game and actually find a quality team for yourself. If you can, it's almost like a rite of passage to keep working until you find that one or two. Now I've got about I've got about four or five teams that I work with who can actually do complete end-to-end realization of my designs. And a lot of other brand owners I've spoken to, like, why do you have so many? because ultimately one of them is going to prove to be not good enough when it comes to some aspect, and I'm going to have to kick them to the curb, and I'll be merciless about it, because I'm very clear right from the start. Quality, this is what quality means to me, and I'll keep saying it again and again and again. You know, if something comes up on a review and a reviewer says, "Oh, now look at this," you know, blah blah blah, even though it's a prototype, I will tell my manufacturing partner for that particular watch, "Hey, it's being noticed by people. I told you about it already. You need to do it better for mass production." You know, so
So you're working with five different manufacturers.
Hard case with yep.
Okay.
Yeah, complete end-to-end manufacturing teams, and that allows me to have multiple prototyping projects on the go at any one time. And it does mean, though, that I would say probably in about 2 years' time. Sorry, this is another helicopter going past.
No worries.
That in about another 2 years' time, I will have distilled that down to probably 2, maximum 3 key teams, because they will have proven themselves to be able to meet my standards and the standards of my customers, what my customers are expecting. So it may be a lot now, but that'll distill down into
to keep the best. But it's a lot of cost up front.
Yeah, it's a lot of
cost up front.
Yes, I'm plowing a lot of money up front now into
for sampling and things like that, drawings.
Yeah. So there's a lot of money up front, but what will happen, because we're building a strong platform we've got a new website being built at the moment, and that between that and a strong mailing list, moving away from Kickstarter. The plan is to then, like I said before, start to chain together those releases and find a marketing strategy that isn't focused on those big campaign build-ups, which are very slow and really focused on one watch. You know, I want to be able to release 3 watches a year. You know, I don't think that's unreasonable to get us to a point where we've got, you know, either a model update and 2 new watches, or 2 model updates and 1 new new watch. But at the moment, I've released 2 watches, and I've been doing it for I'm doing it for nearly 2 years, or about 2 years, and I've only released 2 watches, which isn't a good. It's just that building up that momentum that takes time.
And that's part of being a micro brand, right? And so it's building up that momentum. It's building up credibility for your brand, which is a direct reflection of credibility for yourself, right? And a big component of this too, and you know, I interact with people in the same groups and same circles that you do. And when you've got an authentic passion for your project and for your product and for the community as a whole, you can build those connections to bring some credibility to yourself on those platforms, right? Where, you know, we could say that people can be merciless, but at the same time, you know, I've met some fantastic people on some of the micro brand groups, League of Micro Brands, for example. You know, that ultimately you build those relationships, you build brand champions for yourself too, because you care about your product, you care about what you're
definitely.
And you care about those relationships that you're building with your customers too. So somebody's looking for a Blue Dial dive watch, I guarantee there's a Jing Clear customer out there that's more than happy to share a wrist shot of that Blue Dial dive watch, right? And that's such a huge part of it at this stage, right? At this micro brand. Going from there, you know, when we talk about engaging with our fan base, engaging with our customer base, other brands, you and I know have discussed this kind of in depth in the past in private conversations, but you know, we're at an interesting crossroads right now in the micro brand world as brands, where obviously we want to provide people the best watches for the best value possible that we can, but at the same time, we want to still be able to turn out watch after watch after watch for them and satisfy that need, and you know, cover things like the cost of producing multiple prototypes. So what are your thoughts on, you know, kind of the state of the industry right now when it comes to where a customer's expectation might be on price of a given watch with a given movement. And yeah, like where do you think we go from here? Not just you, not just Alex and myself, but as an industry in as a whole.
Yeah, there's certainly and Kickstarter doesn't do the industry many favors in lots of ways, because in order to get high distribution of your product in the first instance, for example, we first launched taking the Gin Clear Diver as a sort of a test case, you have to make major sacrifices about actually potentially generating some revenue that isn't sort of uncommitted revenue. So when we did the Gin Clear Diver, I was too scared to put a price on it that I think that it was actually worth, and so I undersold it price-wise dramatically. The first two reward tiers, if I'm looking back at the first reward tier from the Gin Clear Diver one, I think there was a margin there in terms of what went into my hand of about $20 US for the watch, where once you factored in the manufacturing of the watch, the shipping costs, which the import costs, the whole life cycle, including building some fat into your operating budget so that you could service warranty claims, and all the shipping associated with that. There was about a $20 on, so the margins are very slim, and that is, you essentially have to take it on the chin, because if you want to get as many of your watches out there as possible for your first release, which is kind of what you need to do, you have to accept a bit of a major compromise. So you don't expect to be making any money unless by some miracle you've got an incredible marketing team sitting behind you that can do a first release that raises hundreds and thousands of dollars, and you're selling for a quartz watch. We know some of those quartz watches. I don't know, Filippo Loretti is a classic one. They went to Kickstarter and they raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for a quartz watch. They
raised millions. They raised millions, Peter.
Millions,
not
now,
hundreds of thousands, millions.
BS marketing tactics that nonetheless paid off.
It worked.
Paid off. It's all good for me to say it's BS, but I wouldn't mind sitting on that mountain of cash.
Exactly.
But I guess my perspective was, I'm not going to pay $20,000 to have a marketing team spin a whole bunch of lies about this watch. I'm going to let the watch speak for itself and the service behind the watch speak for itself. But in terms of what customer expectations, where they're at, I think we reached a bit of a point, possibly 12 to 18 months ago, where customers, certainly in the microband space, were demanding so much for so little that it was killing the producers. And I know that
it was killing the brand owner. The producer, the factory always make the money. The only guy who gets killed is you or I or whatever. Is the brand owner.
Yeah, no, I did mean me when I said producer. So
okay.
Yeah, the brand owner. Yeah, it is putting the screws on the brand owner to the point where you're not even allowing the brand owner to make a small amount of money to reward themselves for. I mean, the hours. You wouldn't even believe the amount of hours.
Countless hours of work, of course.
Yeah, unpaid work. I mean, if you were to factor in the hourly rate, it could be like, it might be $1.50 to $2 an hour. Generous. That might be generous. Over the course of 9 to 10 months in the full cycle of development and release, which actually might extend back 18 months to 2 years. So I think we might have turned a corner quite recently, where I think what I'm seeing in the microbrand space via the various community channels that we've got is that people are beginning to accept that you can't just value a watch based on what you think the movement costs. And I've been involved in those conversations, and I know, Mike, we've spoken about those in private about the process of education that goes along with helping people to realize that there's more to a watch than just the cost of the movement. We went from a Salida SW200 in the Gin Clear diver to a Miyota 9 series for the Mandala.
Why is that?
We wanted it to be very slim, so the actual case thickness, including the case back, is about 10 point. I think it's about 10 point. It might be 10 millimeters if I'm trying to remember the blueprints, and then it's about 10.3, 10.4, including the crystal, right? So we
Oh, we're kind of losing you here.
Wait, Peter, we lost you.
Slim.
Okay.
We could have thrown a Miyota 330, a Salida SW300 in it, but then no one would have bought it. You can't charge what it's worth. Movements.
Say again. So you went for the Miyota to be slimmer than the Swiss movement?
Well, they're slimmer than the SW200. So the 9039 obviously is quite a big saving in the thickness of the movement. It allowed.
But do you think? And do you think that performance-wise, it is worth it to get the Miyota over a Celita?
Excellent question. The Miyota 903, the Miyota 9015 and 9039 are actually superior to the Salida SW200. I believe it, and I don't,
but we have different point of view of that. What makes you believe that the Miyota can reach a higher performance than the Celita?
Well, it depends what your performance measures are. So I understand that the Miyota has a only winds in one direction and makes a bit of noise and has a bit of a wobble in some cases. However, I see fewer beat errors in the Miyota. I see extremely good accuracy figures out of the box without pre-regulation. I also see fewer. I see a lower failure rate. I've got a higher failure rate in my SW200s, and they don't age well. So a Salida SW200 that's been straight out of the factory is great, but they tend to suffer. What I've seen is they tend to suffer if
transportation
aren't used. If they aren't used soon, they suffer from lubrication issues. You end up getting a rotor. You end up getting the rotor turning when you're hand winding. And that's a lubrication issue. And so if you're not using the movement really quickly, then you end up having to essentially pay servicing costs for customers who are like, hang on, when I'm hand winding movement, I'm getting the rotors spinning. And that's obviously, rotor helicoptering is not a good sign. It means your movement's not aged well. I see fewer failures in the Miyota 9 series movements that I've played with personally, and in the movements in the micro brands I've got, and in the watches that I've made through second hour and first stage on the
Miyota. To tell you honestly, the Miyota, I found the date window is tiny, ridiculously tiny. It doesn't have a quick set for the price. It doesn't have a quick set.
Yeah, it does now.
And those extras and the pinion, the part in the middle where you put the hands on, is like super huge. So if you don't have in the design wise, you don't have your bevels. I don't know what you say in English. That is like slightly upper. It looks like you're on the side of a swimming pool. And that whole thing of that extra slim movements makes it actually a bit unstable. And I don't know. You need to see, but somehow some from other micro brand owner, many comments like it's a fragile movement. On the long term, it's not as stable as they say it is. But I made my first prototype. We made the first mint prototype with the Miyota, but because I was expecting that people will open the watch more and go to that modding things, we went back to a Seiko thing because the Miyota was just, you need to, like a ETA, you need to screw the feet of the dial. It's much more complicated operation wise. So we decided to move down to retrograde this way. But I got the people want to have like a high beat movements, and they're all tripping about that slim, that thin things of the case. To me, I don't think it's really important, but yeah, the microbrand community seems to be so much about that Miyota and that slim thing. It's funny somehow sometimes.
Ooh,
and price wise, when you're purchasing wholesale Miyota compared to a Celita, the price difference is not huge. And to me, I don't know, but it's again, it might be a false perception, but we're talking about that Swiss made thing. But to me, I'd rather put, if it's, let's say, $100, it is not exactly $100, but I'd rather put $100 in a Celita if I had to choose between the Celita and the Miyota. But once again, it's a personal choice.
But it is, but this is the cool thing is from, because again, like that's an exhaustive conversation within the enthusiast community, right? Is, you know, the NH35 versus the Miyota 9015, right? And the Celita. But again, like from a community perspective, I think that most people would still place that Celita or ETA Swiss movement, they would still place that at a higher tier than the Miyota movement. So I think that's a really interesting insight that you provided, Peter, from your own perspective, from a brand ownership perspective, and from a design perspective, what the benefits were to you in the Mandala, and from a brand ownership perspective, when it comes to what your, because again, like when it comes down to it, it's not a list of components that compose the total price of a watch, right? It just is. Of course, it is for factory direct sales through Alibaba, AliExpress. You're paying for the price of the components and a small sliver of profit, right? But we need to be able to service the watches. We need to
pay for design, pay for marketing, pay for advertising.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever, distributions, everything.
For you to ship watches that have been QC checked to your level, you've got to import them to Australia, right?
Yep. And sit there and look at every single one,
right?
And then even then
so you're paying
you're only as good as
what the percentage is that you pay importing there. But I mean, for me to Canada, in Alberta, we're lucky we've got a lower cost to import here. But you know, that's 10% on any watch that I bring in here. If I bring something in here, that's 10% that goes on it right there. So from a customer perspective, you know, that 10% is coming from somewhere, or it has to go somewhere, right? So is it fair as a customer that 10% gets passed down the line? I think if the customer knows that, I know if I'm buying your watch and I know that, I think that's totally fair. So I think it's, you know, a component of it is kind of that education part too, to say like, these are some of the expenses that a brand owner incurs, right? And I think it's reasonable that a portion.
Well, I pay, like you, I pay that 10% just to get them in. So I pay 10% just to get them into Australia, just so that I can look over each one of them personally, and then I pay that's the GST, and then I pay 5% import duty, which is calculated on the total cost of the shipment. Plus, they factor in the shipping costs as well into that. So I pay 15% just to get them in, and then I have to sit there with every single one. Tracking, doing all my tests, and then you know, recording any of them that have issues, recording what those issues are against the unit, and then getting back in contact with the manufacturer and saying, hey, we've got these 5 here that have got this problem, these 4 here that have got this problem, and hoping that they'll be responsive enough to do what needs to be done. We had a big fight with the Gin Clear diver. We had 45 Gin Clear divers from the first production run that had a small dial blemish, which was actually not that visible to the naked eye. I could only see it with my reading glasses on. You know, I had to get it fixed because you know, if I send those out to customers, someone's going to find it. You know, they're probably as fussy, if not more fussy than me. But so it's a hard road. But I think we've turned a corner. And I also think once you've established yourself, you can begin to charge what is fair as opposed to just what the customer wants, would like to pay. Because yes, of course, they can go to. Hang on, I've got some sunlight coming in here.
All good.
Yeah, so they can go to AliExpress and find something with perhaps comparable specs, perhaps probably most likely not an original design, but
Of
they
course.
can go and find it, and they'll get it shipped directly from the factory. And of course, if you've got a problem with that watch in 2 years' time, you might be a month away from the end of the warranty period. You're not going to get any help from the manufacturer of that watch.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
And 2 years time, you being a nice guy saying 2 years time. It might be 2 months time. I would not be as optimistic as 2 years.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, of course.
But there's a good chance on some of those factory direct ones, you get a complimentary eyelash underneath the dial, and everybody always
exactly
underneath the sapphire, you get a chunk piece of somebody's eyelash or a couple of complimentary specks of dust. And it is interesting. But I do agree with you, and I have seen that the tone kind of change a little bit for the better. And again, it changes for the better for the people that establish a foothold and can stick around for long enough, to rack up some good reviews and build some strong relationships. And I'm a huge proponent of building those relationships with customers, between brands, between brand owners, because obviously, we can benefit from each other's failures and successes. And, we can benefit credibility wise sometimes off of what those relationships are. And, like I said, we're all active in the groups too. And there's multiple times that I see, like Josh, for example, with Swiss Watch Company, if I see somebody looking for a field watch right now, I think the bunker's great. And I think he's a great guy. So I'll tag him up for the bunker on it, right? So yeah, it's a very cool thing that we see happening now, and to see kind of the progression of things with the industry and with some of the brand owners within the industry and some of the great enthusiasts that are just like, it's shocking the amount of support that some people throw towards financial.
I know, it's amazing. It's really stunning. It's very humble. It's very humbling experience when someone who bought your first watch, he's then sort of helping to promote your next one. I don't know where else you can see that in any kind of product community. I'm not talking about influencers. We know that we get contacted via social media by vultures and maggots of all kinds wanting something for free in exchange
watch.
for.
They want free watch, my friend. Every day.
Want a free,
give me a free watch,
PM, and I'll do
give me a free watch. Give me a free watch. Yeah. I'll do 2 posts, and then you'll be rich.
But listen, some of those guys have a really good track record with Flipple already.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to send.
Yeah, definitely. They're champions for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. It's a crazy world.
Yes.
Hey, Peter, last and not the least, we were very interested to know how do you succeed to manage like a day job and the family life, and as well as your watch project on the side. It's very challenging to have all those activities together. How do you deal with it on a daily basis?
By just sort of slowly going insane, really. I don't know how I actually don't know how I deal with it. What I do is just, I think I probably, after the launch of the campaign, I think I probably came close to coming unstuck, because I've been working for so many months, doing my day job, and then switching, swivel chairing around to do the watch business, and working through till 10, 11 p.m. And then getting up the next morning and starting before my day job to do more. And then when the campaign launched, I think I just sort of, I've got some family health issues happening in the background. My dad is not very well.
Sorry to hear that.
Well, he's got dementia, so it's beginning to sort of it's beginning to sort of show itself in a bit more of an obvious way now, and so I'm having to go down, and he's some distance away. I have to get there by plane, so there's stuff going on in the background, but the balance for me is it's not that great, to be honest. I'm hoping it will improve once my fiance comes on board, and then I can sort of. There's this list of things that I want to do that at the moment I'm really not able to sort of realize them, but it'll all work itself out over time. How I don't have any special strategy for managing it, to be honest, but I just make sure that everyone, as much as possible, that everyone gets what they need. But it's for this period here. If the second hour watches is going to run here and beyond, then the way I'm operating personally right now can only be for this period. And then I have to say, well, if I haven't got a strategy in place by this point to alleviate some of that pressure on myself, then I'll have to ultimately step away. I'll burn out, and it's already there is signs of that sort of starting to happen at the moment. I'm going away on this Easter break weekend for a few nights just away, but I'm just not able to switch off. I've got people coming on the campaign. Some of the stuff I receive in the background, and even in the public arena, but some of the messages I've received in the background about the campaign would just turn your hair white. Just some of the demands and some of the diva behaviour of people who seem to feel that I'm operating the campaign entirely, for their own needs, and rather than recognising the value of what's being offered, want to try and put me in a headlock and squeeze more value out of me somehow. I don't know how that's possible, but there's been a bit of cruelty in this campaign, in behind the scenes, which hasn't been very pleasant for me. And obviously that carries out into your home life when you're copying it behind the scenes, with messages. I almost posted an update about 5 days ago saying, hey, enough's enough. This is a campaign update. Enough's enough, people. I'm getting a lot of messages in the background from people who are this and that, and some of them are going way too far.
What kind of messages? They complain about the price? They complain about the value? What they complain about?
On day 4 of the campaign, we've been funded already, and we've gone significantly past that. But the campaign plateaued much sooner than the gin clear. The gin clear continued to climb progressively right through to the very end, whereas this one hit a plateau, and already after day 4 it completely stalled. So what I did was I offered a free strap to anyone who joined at the highest price reward tier.
Nice,
because the other ones had basically gone. I said, if you join at the high price reward tier, I'll give you a free leather strap. The offer went for 48 hours, and in total, I think we ended up giving, by looking at the records, you can see we probably gave 8 to 10 straps away once we've done the calculation of who grabbed that particular reward during that time. But I copped, from the people who joined in the first 4 days of the campaign and didn't get that free strap, or had to add one on.
They complain about it.
They complained, but it wasn't just complaints. It was some pretty full-on attacks at me for offering a free strap to get new business in. Now, any business that you care to mention is free to offer any kind of incentive, incentivize a sale to any customer at their discretion at any time they wish. But if you dare do that during your campaign, you'll get dozens of people who will contact you to personally rake you over the coals, to tell you that they're deeply offended and horrified that you would offer something to new people who joined on day 5, as opposed to them who joined on day 4. So it was, and that hasn't stopped. I still get the odd message from people. Another person today who's decided they're going to jump on and tell me that if I don't offer because we've got a stretch goal of a red dial, and it's at 235,000 Australian dollars. And we actually passed it, but then since then we've had a few people cancel their pledge. We've dropped back down, but this one person who just jumped on today to tell me that I needed to cancel one of the other dial colours and just make the red dial anyway. Otherwise, they were going to pull their pledge. So they're basically threatening to pull their pledge if I didn't accommodate their specific requirements.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of thing that happens.
Annoying.
And it's unpleasant to deal with, especially considering how much work has gone in. And some people have been tracking the campaign, tracking that particular watch for 6 months since we first teased the first images of it. And so they've come in looking for a specific dial color. If I pull that dial color out, imagine what that's going to do to them.
Of course, it's not good.
Brand all this time.
But you know what?
Anyway,
at the same time, to focus on that stuff is exhausting, and it wears on you when you get some of that kind of unreasonable feedback or engagement. But I think that's just those times that you've got to think like, the other 350 guys were so great to deal with, or gals,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've got some amazing people and amazing support, so it is fantastic.
Yeah, you've got those brand champions and community champions and stuff out there, and it's like totally every once in a while you get one of those messages that rattles you a little bit. And I guess that's the thing that some people don't realize is like the small business, like you do a little happy dance every time that the email
you got a sale,
you got an order. And you can't help but take things a little bit personally when some of that negative stuff comes in. That's just the reality of it, right? And
true.
In this this phase of evolving as a company, it's just the way it is.
You have to develop thick skin very quickly, and my skin has thickened up quite a lot very quickly, especially if you cast your mind back to the first campaign. So it's and I'll always be the person who fronts the brand. And if you send an email, you're most likely going to be speaking to me 9 times out of 10. Sometimes Akira responds to some messaging, but most of the time it's me. And I do really enjoy hearing from people, even if they've got some suggestions about how I can do things differently. But I always prefer it when it's when the suggestions are presented in a
constructive
manner.
way. Of course.
Okay, I think. Do we think we got enough?
I think we got more than enough.
Peter,
I gotta.
Might be a little
Sorry.
on the editing side, but we'll let you get back to your vacation there. And
thank you.
Nice.
Hey,
nice
Peter, I have a last question I wanted to ask.
Alex, yes.
Sorry, I have a last question I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
To build the email list, did you occur to run any Google ads or Facebook ads at all?
Really, I think if you go back 12 months for the Gin Clear, yes, but not so much anymore. I do appeals to sign up for the newsletter during a pre-launch period, and I find that I get some good organic growth during that time.
Nice.
And whenever there's a review from a major reviewer, I also get like random Rob. I might get 100 new subscribers at that point to the newsletter, and similar for when Jody from Just One More Watch reviewed the Mandala. I got a massive number over a couple of weeks of people signing up. Then I think that's my preferred way of doing it, because I find that's all organic, and those are the people who they won't just unsubscribe the first time they get a mailing
message,
a newsletter from you. They'll stay with you.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah.
Awesome.